Rev it up and welcome to Cars Yeah, show number 2370. This week we're celebrating the Rolex Monterey Motorsports Reunion. It takes place August 16th through the 19th at the iconic Laguna Seca racetrack. Buckle up, we're going racing, and be prepared to be inspired.
This is Cars Yeah, where you'll enjoy interviews with inspiring automotive enthusiasts. Mark Green is here to provide you with a fuel injection of automotive inspiration. So get in, sit down, buckle up, and get ready for a wild ride here on Cars Yeah.
Hello, inspiring automotive enthusiasts, and welcome to Cars Yeah. Today I'm in Burbank, California with a very special guest by the name of Tom McIntyre. Tom, welcome to Cars Yeah. Do you have any gear, and are you ready to release the clutch?
I am ready to go.
You're a guy that when I say that to, I go, this is just silly, because this guy's been ready to release the clutch his whole life, it seems like, because of what you've been doing in the vintage racing world. And before I introduce you properly, and we talk more about that, I always ask all my guests to go a little deeper and share something about yourself that most people maybe don't know about you.
I guess a little known fact probably is when I was quite a bit younger, I did quite a bit of singing, and that's something that I think my friends wouldn't expect to hear. So that was a lot of fun. I performed a cappella and sang Bach for some reason in German, and
oh my gosh!
So I know it's crazy, but it was really a lot of fun for me, and something I enjoyed for 8 or 9 year period. Yeah,
oh my
that
gosh.
was fun.
Well, you've got a great voice, so I won't ask you to sing today. I was trying to think. Let's see whose birth. If we'd been recording this yesterday, I just had my first granddaughter born. You could have sung "Happy Birthday" to her.
Oh, isn't that nice? Congratulations!
Absolutely, pretty special in our world. But I won't make you sing today. Instead, we will talk about race cars singing as they go down full RPM down the track. So let me introduce you. Tom McIntyre is a vintage racer who's been enjoying lapping tracks since 1961. Geez, I think I was 2 years old then. Holy cow. You got me beat a little bit. However, he's really more of a conservator. Tom carries other titles too, including successful businessman. He was an entrepreneur in every sense of the word before the noun became a commonplace moniker. But in the automotive realm, even though his business acumen is primarily autobound, he is a caretaker entrusted with protecting, preserving, and more importantly, enjoying some of the finest racing machines that the world's craftsmen and artisans have ever made. Every one of his treasures has their own unique story and a unique emotional attachment for Tom. And like a proud father, he knows them all and is pleased and patient to share these vehicle stories with anyone who is interested and has the time to listen. And that's what we're going to do today. But first, a word from our sponsors. They keep the gas in our racing tanks here, so give them a little love. Buckle up. We'll be right back. Years ago, when it was time to renew my collector car insurance policy, my carrier's rates went up. Way up, but my usage was the same and I never made a claim. I didn't even have a ticket. So what's with that? So I turned to American Collectors Insurance. Has your collector car insurance recently raised your rates for no good reason? Tired of paying an annual membership fee? Then it's time to look around and call American Collectors Insurance. I shopped around, I asked friends for recommendations, and found a winner that I can trust. And boy, I'm glad I did. I saved hundreds of dollars every year and slept better at night knowing my baby was properly insured. American Collectors Insurance have been protecting vehicles since 1976. They provided me with an agreed value insurance policy backed by their history of taking great care of their clients. What could be better than that? So give them a call and ask for a quote today. 866-ACI-YEAH. That's 866-224-9324. And protect the ones you love like I did with American Collectors Insurance. Classic car insurance designed by collectors for collectors. Did you know that Cars Yeah is in the top 1% of all podcasts based on listenership according to Libsyn, the premier RSS feed for podcasts in the United States? That's right. Plus, DuPont Registry recommended Cars Yeah is one of their top 10 car podcasts for you to enjoy. Cars Yeah has experienced tremendous growth, plus your ads are evergreen, meaning they never go away. And more listeners find Cars Yeah every day for their daily dose of automotive inspiration. Do you want to expose your brand to a highly targeted list of automotive enthusiasts in a very unique and very personal way? Well, I can help you. Contact me, Mark Green, at mark@carsyeah.com or through the website at carsyeah.com today to learn more. For several years now, you've heard me talk about Linkage Magazine. I've been a subscriber since the start. Their talented and creative team brings you a spectacular publication and website that shares the automotive passion from a worldwide perspective. Linkage is about driving, restoring, collecting, and first-hand experience at collector car auctions and more. They bring you real-world values plus rational, experienced opinions on the current markets. They cover the automotive world and the people who share our passions. And Linkage Magazine has grown, mailing you 6 issues annually. Join me on this journey with Linkage. They're geared for the automotive life. You can subscribe at linkagemag.com. We are back. Now, we could do 10 shows on you and what you've done with racing, but we've only got one to play with here, and we're going to be talking about this upcoming Rolex historic races, which are just probably some of the most special ones in the country. But I do want to go back in time a little bit first and start with a company that you had that is pretty cool, because not only have you been into vintage race cars for a long time, but you had a business in the automotive world, ACSCO Products in Burbank. Pretty cool. Can you tell us a little bit about how you got into that business?
Well, that was a real real fun project, and quite a surprising one for me, in that my dad sold nuts and bolts and screws to the aircraft industry, and he was over at Hughes Aircraft down off of Imperial Highway. And as he was leaving, he looked over his shoulder and saw some sports cars running around. So he went over there. Surely they would need nuts and bolts and screws. And he walked in the door and they said, yeah, we need nuts and bolts and screws. That's for sure. You wouldn't know anybody that makes nameplates, would you? So Dad and I got on the phone. He called me that night and said, well, didn't you tell me you were casting metal and you were doing other things? Could you make a nameplate using that process that you just learned in school? And I said, well, I'll go ask my teacher, and maybe, so my teacher looked at me quizzically and said, well, of course we can make a nameplate. He said, let's turn it into a school project and class project. So we all worked away at it and built a little mold and made some samples real quick. I sent them down to Dad, and he took them in the door over there at Shelby's, and they turned around and said, well, this looks really nice. Could you make one like this? So anyway, I started making drawings. I had engineering classes, and I started designing nameplates and emblems for Shelby cars.
Oh my gosh.
I was still in school.
Yeah, I mean, this is such a cool story. Now, you say nameplates, and we all know what the kind of concept of emblems, but was it basically like the word Shelby or the circle with the cobra in it, or are we talking about all those things?
All of those things. We did them all, the coiled snake and so on and so forth, working directly with their designers, Peter Brock and some of the other fellows that came and went. Then Ford Motor bought them shortly after we walked through the door, and they said, well, we've inherited you as a supplier. So now I'm a supplier to Ford Motor.
Oh my gosh. Boom.
So they said, well, we want to make a Torino Cobra, and can you make all these badges? And then it was a Mercury Cougar, and then it was badges for just about every high performance car that was being built at the time. Then GM found us and said, we want to build a Z28, and can you make that one? And then it was Oldsmobile knock on the door and said, we want to build a 442. And then very fortuitously, Toyota, Honda, Mazda, all those guys moved to Los Angeles, their headquarters at the end of the Harbor Freeway. And they all came with Japanese cars with Japanese names on them. So they needed to rebadge all their cars with U.S. names. And they had a Ford engineer working for him. He said, oh, you're in luck.
I know a guy.
There's a guy right here in Southern California that'll rebadge these cars for you. He does lower volumes. And he said, you're not going to sell very many of these things anyway. So
ouch.
They called and I started rebadging all of the Toyotas and Hondas and Mazdas that were coming into the country. So that turned out to be a really, really neat project. That was probably 1978. Mm-hmm. Honestly, I got off the phone about an hour ago in a team meeting working on Toyota badge for 2026, and
Oh my gosh.
so we're
Oh
we're
my
still
gosh.
very actively engaged in making the chrome nameplate. And for those, I guess, who don't really understand what we're talking about, it's the bright shiny chrome emblem on the back of the car
Of
that says
course.
2.6 liter, or maybe the Honda H logo, or maybe 7.2 something.
So everybody in the world has seen a car with your emblem on it.
Yeah, and it's
Wow.
it's really funny when I talk to people. They say, "Well, why don't they make those themselves?" So it's kind of an interesting question, but very few of the car makers make anything. They call them auto assembly plants, and basically they're buying every part they use from somebody else and assembling them. So
Yeah, I've attended many Auto Mechanica shows in Germany, and remember the
yeah,
first one I went to, I saw these people making emblems like you, and
oh
I thought, wait a minute, what? Why? And then you start to realize, and then you start going to car factories. I remember the first time I went to the Porsche factory, and there's these carts coming in with all these plaques on trays basically, and they were saying, yeah, we really don't make anything here. I think at that time the engines were about it, but the bodies aren't made here. They're just painted and put together, and all these parts come in. People don't realize that yeah, most manufacturers just manufacture, they don't make. They just
yeah, exactly.
Wow. Well, this is just wonderful. I mean, it's so spectacular. And another thing I wanted to touch on that you've been a part of and one of the founding members was the Checkered Flag 200 group out of the Peterson Museum. Now, there's a group of guys, and you were right there at the beginning.
Yeah, I think I'm member number 12 or something like that.
Wow.
Over there, and like many people, our benefactor over there is Bruce Meyer,
Yes.
and pretty much everybody knows Bruce, and he pretty much called and said, "I'm showing people through an empty Orbox building down here, and we're going to turn it into a car museum, and you love cars so much, I knew that you would just sign up and be one of our members right away." And so sure enough, I did. I signed up pretty much right then and there, and I've been a part of the board of the Checkered Flag 200 group, which is a special support group. Oh, gee, I've been deeply involved with the Peterson ever since the very first day.
When was that? What year would that have
Holy mackerel!
been? We're going back.
Now you've got me.
Was it in the 70s?
No, it wasn't that far back. It was probably in the late 90s.
Oh, okay. Okay. Wow.
It's been 25 years at least. So I remember when we did that celebration.
Oh my gosh. Well, it's incredible. Yeah. Well, this dives us into racing because my understanding is that when you were 16, you jumped into a Model A. This was way back in 1961, and you decided to go racing. Was that the beginning?
Well, it was, but you have to realize that my racing in that car was, so I had been going to San Fernando drag strip, so I took a virtually stock Model A Ford 4-cylinder, 40 horsepower, and I entered it in a drag race at San Fernando.
A drag race?
And I knew exactly how fast it would go in the quarter mile because it would accelerate to top speed and it would not go any faster than 58 miles per hour.
Okay.
So I told the guy on the starting line, I said, my timing slip is going to say 58 miles an hour when I get down there. And I said, don't start anybody else. That's going to take me a while, So anyway, we had quite a good time with that. But that opened the door. And sure enough, I started going back to San Fernando drag strip with a little more potent stuff, maybe
Sure.
a borrowed car from dad and so on and so forth. But that started it all. And in 1961, I was, 17 or 18.
Yeah,
And
young man, yeah.
what was really the fun part of that car and really my launching was I asked my mom if I wanted to go to the World's Fair in 1964. And she said, well, how are you going to do that? And I said, well, I've got some friends and they're going to take their Model A's and we're going to drive our Model A's from here to the World's Fair. Well, where's that? It's in New York.
No, oh my God.
And she said, are you kidding? And I said, nope, I've been saving up. I've got $100. I'll probably be gone pretty much all summer. And I'm going to go to the New York World's Fair and back
Wow.
before I have to go to school again.
Oh my gosh.
So I did that in a virtually stock Model A Ford. So
Oh my
that, that,
gosh.
that was really fun. And we had a bunch of teenagers, and boy, we just had a ball doing that.
Oh my gosh. This is wow. Well, there's a beginning for you. And then as we move forward into the 70s and 80s, I mean, you crewed for IMSA teams. You crewed at Le Mans. I mean, there's some names here: Dick Barber, Ralph Cook, Wins Racing.
Yeah.
Yeah. Walk us through some of that part of your racing career. I say
geez,
career, but you're having fun, right?
Yeah, I was having fun. I had bought the Cobra by then, and I was I'd started vintage racing already, and I had been real involved in all of that, and in traveling to the racetrack. Some other people were on the plane and said, "Oh, my boss is going to Le Mans." And I said, "Oh, really?" And she said, "Yeah." And I said, "Well, we're going to go to Le Mans as just, we're going to go as spectators. We had been once in '74 and wanted to go again. So we were on our way, and they said, "Well, you should give him a call." And so I did that. And when we spoke, he said, "We need some crewmen, and we need some help." And so I said, "Well, I can do that." And they said, "Well, you'll need to call the guy who's putting the car together and get together with them." And he said, "Yeah, come on down." And so he said, "We're going to go to the 24 Hours at Daytona in a month or so. So why don't you start with us there? And then from there, we're going to go to Sebring. And from there, we're going to go on to Road Atlanta." And pretty soon I realized that we were going to do the entire IMSA season in a Porsche RSR.
Oh,
and
gosh. Wow.
So I became very well acquainted with these guys, and we became friends and went on and on about all of that. And I remained part of their active racing crew for, probably 5 or 6 years.
Wow.
And doing 20, 25 races a year. And in the meantime, in between all of that, I was making nameplates for cars.
Well, I was going to say, how are you running a business while you're off at the races all the time?
I know. It was really, really kook. But, I guess where there's a will, there's a way. And I managed all that. But you know what? It really boiled down to having a great team at work who would support that activity, letting me go off and do that. But keep in mind that we would leave Thursday night and fly to the race and race the race and fly home Sunday night.
I'll be back at work on Monday.
I'd be rolling in at midnight or 1 a.m., but I got up at 5 and went off to work the next morning.
That's a passion and dedication there. Now, you casually passed over a little comment in all of that, mentioning when I bought the Cobra, you bought a 66 427, I believe it was in 1971. You can't casually glance over something like that.
Yeah. Well, it's a big problem making badges for Shelby and being around the cars.
No kidding. Yeah. Like a kid in a candy store.
It's infectious, and all of a sudden you realize that there's not a better sports car around right now. I just was so bitten by the bug that I pushed very, very, very hard to find one that was already modified for racing. It was not an SC version, but a street car that had been converted to SC kind of condition. Mm-hmm. So it was pretty much ready to race. And that's when 3 or 4 friends of mine, we went out to Willow Springs and rented the racetrack and started driving around and not knowing anything about racing, other than obviously watching it and knowing it. But we pretty much taught ourselves how to drive and really got fairly proficient at it. So it was really a lot of fun. Really
wow. Well, I know you got involved with SCCA and also through vintage racing, and you ended up winning a championship. Was it a couple years? Is that true?
Yeah. Well, yeah. I gravitated. I didn't do that in the Cobra. I decided that I would get I think it was an A sedan Camaro, 1968 Camaro that had a 358 engine and 4-speed trans, and it was all stripped down, just had a cage inside and one seat and little few instruments and a few switches. And so I bought that, and a friend and I shared it. We drove around together and we did our own separate races, and his turn, my turn, his turn, my turn sort of a thing. And we went on and ended up in SCCA, and we won Solo One championship. It was just another step closer to real racing, but I won the championship one year and he won it the next. So
Awesome.
that was pretty cool.
Yeah. Well, you also got to tell me a little bit about this group you ran with called the Wild West Racers.
Geez.
Tell me about that.
Yeah. Thanks. We had raced all over California. We'd been to Riverside and we'd been to Willow Springs and we'd been to Monterey, and we felt like we were done with all that. And we thought, these historic cars should be racing on historic tracks. And so we know that other vintage races were going on in other parts of the country. So we kind of solicited those and said, could we come and race at your track with you from California? So they thought, well, that's a good idea. Why don't you do that? So we looked into it and made a deal with Robert Pass and rented one of his trucks and a driver for a better part of a year. And there were 6 of us, and we got together, formed a little alliance over a dinner and a cocktail or two. And and the next thing you know, we've got an 18-wheeler and we're headed out for the summer. And we just left the cars and the truck out there going from place to place. And then we'd fly home and fly back and fly home and fly back and race the summer away. It was really, really fun. And that started, I think, holy mackerel, that started in, I think, 82 or 3 or 4. So we'd been at it, racing for, a decade already. We started doing this, and it ended up just being huge amount of fun. Articles started appearing in the paper when we showed up. The Wild West Racers are due to show up here, and everybody was like,
nice,
standing at the airport waving at us. It was really funny, and we just had a lovely time together, and we've remained best friends ever since. And the time has taken a couple of the guys, but the rest of us still get together and have our annual Christmas party and celebrate the wonderfulness of our youth.
Yes, definitely. Now, one of the cars that relates to that time period is a special car, 68 Penske Trans Am Mark Donahue Camaro.
Oh boy.
Oh yeah. Yeah. Oh boy. All right.
Yeah. Yep. In the mid 80s, I got a call from a guy who said, I've got this car and I'd like to sell it. And I hear it has some Penske history. And I said, well, why did you call me? And he said, well, I saw a note in one of the magazines about the Wild West Racers, and it mentioned your name. And he said, I looked you up in the phone book, and I was just wondering if you could help me sell this car. So at any rate, I said, well, tell me about it. And he said, well, it's got Penske history and blah, blah, blah. And I said, oh, yeah, right. I said, you do not have that car. That car is likely in the Smithsonian. It is such a famous car. And he said, well, that's what they told me when I bought it. So I said, nah, you don't have it. So I said, if you want to sell it, he said, well, there's some kids down the street that want to buy it. And he said, but how much should I charge? And I said, well, an old Camaro. I had just sold my SCCA car I had, so I knew he could get $4,000 for it. So I said, get $4,000 for it. And he said, oh my gosh, he called me back and he said, the kids said 400 maybe.
Oh, geez.
So I said, okay, I'll come look at it. So I had all these books about Penske. I'd been reading about, the unfair advantage and all the stories, and just reading all the books that I could get. And so there were, because the car was so famous, there were pictures of it everywhere.
Of course.
So I took these books with me and went over and started looking at it. And I was amazed when I saw things like the instrument panel and the steering wheel and the seat and the roll cage and the sheet metal covering the dash. And I'm looking at the picture and I'm looking at the car and I'm looking at the picture and I'm like,
this can't be.
This is the car.
Oh my gosh.
And I mean, I'm counting rivets, on the air cleaner assembly and from photographs, and the air cleaner. I mean, all of these highly visible parts that were so Penske and so authentic. I mean, nobody remade that,
How did the guy get the car?
It had been through 7 owners. It had gone from Penske shop in Pennsylvania to the president of Sears Point Raceway, a guy named Craig Murray, bought it after the last Trans Am race of the season. which was at Sears Point, and so Roger sold it to him right on the spot.
Yeah, make more money for the next season.
Yeah, exactly. And then he had it for a year or so, and he sold it to a guy in Boise, Idaho. He sold it to a guy in Minnesota, and he sold it to a fella named Bill Freeman in San Diego. And he sold it to this guy. His name was Bob Eckhart, and Bob Eckhart sold it to me.
Oh my God.
And
You
so
must
it
have
had
just
been
been like
all over the country,
vibrating when you figured out what was sitting before you.
Oh, I couldn't get that car out of there fast enough.
Yeah. Yeah.
And-
Oh, to think that, thank God the kids down the street didn't have $4,000.
Yeah, but I paid him quite a bit more than that. I tripled or 4 times his money because I said, this car really deserves to be properly bought, and I wouldn't want you to feel as though
Took advantage of it.
I stole it from you, and I don't want you to think that, because one of these days you're going to read about this car again, and I want you to be one
feel
of its
good about it.
proud owners.
Honorable
I want
guy
you to,
you are.
I want you to be happy, and I want you to be able to call me up and be my friend. So.
Well, that's very.
So
very
anyway,
noble.
we said about the restoration, which wasn't much, and we finished it in 1990, probably 80, late 80s, and I took it to Monterey for the Chevrolet year, only for display, because there wasn't a historic racing class for Trans Am cars.
Oh, okay.
So I approached Steve Earle while I was there, and I said, "Hey, have a look at this," and he's like, "Oh my gosh." And he said, "Oh my gosh, that would just make a great vintage racing group with us." So anyway, I knew a fella named Richard Rodek had a Boss 302, and another guy had another Penske Camaro, the 69, and another guy had, the Javelin. Ken Epsman had Javelin. Yeah. And so we had 6 or 7 or 8 or 9 cars. The University of Pittsburgh Camaro was out there somewhere. And so I started calling these guys and saying, "Hey, if I can get a group together, would you come to someplace and race this thing?" So I told Steve Earle, I said, "Well, I've only got 9 cars, and that doesn't really make a very good group for you." And he said, "You bring 9 cars and let's see how it goes." So we made a deal, and we told each other, none of us are really very accomplished driving these things yet. So let's keep together, let's stay together.
Yeah. Make a race of
really door handle to door handle and drive around. And even though we only had the 9 cars, the fans just loved it. The noise, and they were super, super flashy and all different colors. And the magic of the 60s and 70s Trans Am came back to life right then and there. And
wow.
And today we're still racing those cars, and I'm excited to be taking it to Monterey this year with the historic Trans Am group. And we're proud to say that we've got 50 restored historic Trans Am cars that are all of the most authentic. There's not a reproduction car in the bunch, and these are the real cars that the real guys drove. And boy, I'll tell you, did they put on a show. It is just super fun.
This is fantastic, and it's a great segue into what we've got to talk about before I let you go today, because we could sit here and talk about your cars for hours and hours and hours. Mm-hmm. And that is Laguna Seca and the Rolex Motorsport reunion. I wanted to ask you what that means to you, because you've been to that track so many times. You've raced there. You just told a great story of a group you're bringing this year. What does Laguna Seca mean to you?
Wow. Well, Laguna Seca was pretty much the birthplace of road racing, between Laguna Seca and Riverside. The whole racing world started in the 50s at these places. And to me, it's really kind of been like home. I've raced there quite a lot. I was faster 50 years ago, but
we all were, Tom.
Yeah, but it's like hallowed ground, and to set foot on the place, and to recall all the wonderful Can-Am races and Formula 5000 races, and oh my gosh, all the sports car races, and I remember all the sprites going out there duking it out, Lee Mueller and the guys in the CD production. Triumphs, and oh my gosh, Laguna Seca is very special. This is going to be I believe it's my 45th consecutive start at the historic. So it's really been a a magical place for me. And the moment I pack up and leave, I start looking forward to the next time I get to go.
Yeah, I want to remind the listeners, if you've never been to any vintage race, this is the one to go to. Of course, it's during Car Week, so you've got all the other cool events that you've heard here on Cars Yeah, the Quail, Pebble Beach Concours, Concorso Italiano, the Jet Party, all the different events that happen, the tour. I mean, it just goes on and on. But the great thing is, a few years ago, Laguna Seca Historics, they expanded it to 4 days of racing. So if you just want to go out and just want to watch racing for 4 days, you can do it. And Tom here is a great example of what happens when you go to a vintage race. You can walk up to the car, talk to the owners, and ask them about the car. And Tom will sit there and tell you about the stories. That's a big part of it, isn't it?
Oh, it's a great part of it. I can only say that my life around the cars has been pretty magical. And yet, when I stop and really think about what the magic is, and the magic is really the people and the relationships that you develop. And there are spectators and fans who come back year after year and say, "Hi, remember me?" It's just phenomenal to realize how important all of the people that come to these events are, and what they mean to us and what we mean to them. It's really super special.
Yeah, it is the people. It's a reoccurring theme here. One thing that I like to ask people before I let you go today, I'm just wondering if there's a book perhaps you'd like to share, because I love sharing books. Could be a car book, it could be a self-help book, could be anything that maybe relates to vintage racing. But is there one book on your shelf that you might recommend?
Holy mackerel. I spend most of my time looking at the latest motorsports magazines, the Magneto and Octane and some of those. But oh my gosh, I'm remiss. But there was a wonderful book Leo Levine wrote, and it was the Ford, the Dust and the Glory, and it talked about all of the Ford products and all of the racing that went on. And he was an executive at Mercedes-Benz and ended up being a good friend of mine.
Oh, really?
I have really thoroughly enjoyed Ford's Dust and Glory by Leo Levine. So that's an interesting book to read.
Great recommendation. I appreciate that. Well, you shared so much with us today. And as I said, you and I could talk forever about all the different cars. We didn't even touch on some of the other cars you have, which include some Bonneville record-holding cars and a wonderful Interscope Danny and Gaius Porsche. Ooh, I love Porsches, 930 4.5 turbo. But you know what? I think the main thing is to convince our listeners who've not been to the Laguna Seca Historics is to go. The Rolex Monterey Motorsport Reunion is the event. If you're going to start or go anywhere, that's the weekend to be there. Coming up soon, and I just would encourage people to spend time. It's August 16th through the 19th. Before I let you go today, Tom, are there maybe some parting words of wisdom or guidance or thought you might share when it comes to the vintage racing world for people listening today?
Well, the only thing I can say is that most of my relationships have come because of cars, and my job is cars, and my hobby is cars, and cars are my life. And I just give it a minute, and think about your car in a different way, and realize that some people's lives revolve around cars. And I know we all touch cars almost daily, but they take different meanings for different people. So.
Yeah, it is all about the cars, but more so the people and the relationships that are built around all these things. And I've just met so many great people over the years talking here on Cars Yeah with all the inspiring automotive enthusiasts. Now, is there a way for people to learn more about your business? Do you have a website?
Not really. I have such a specialized clientele.
Yeah.
They usually don't go there, but if you're interested in learning more about the business and expand a little expansion on what I told you earlier, there is a video on YouTube that is titled "The Origin of the Shelby Cobra Badge."
Oh, okay.
And I think if you want to take 10 minutes and learn more and actually see the products and see how they were made and so on and so forth, there's a little teeny video out there for you to watch, and it's called "The Origin of the Shelby Cobra Badge." You just type that into the search bar and it'll pop
It'll
up.
pop up. I'll put a link to that on Tom's Cars Yeah show notes page. I'm going to go watch that right as soon as we hang up here. And also, I'll put a link to the Rolex Monterey Motorsports Reunion. You can go and get tickets in advance. Again, I can't encourage you enough to go enjoy these races because once you go, you'll be bit. Tom's got me bit 45 years of going. I've only been the last 32 years, so I've got some catching up to do to a fast racer like you, but it's a wonderful, wonderful event. I want to do a shout out thank you to our friend Barry at the track. He's the one who introduced me to Tom. And what's great is they're doing some major renovations there. So you're going to be on a new surface. They've got the new bridge. They're really making some strides. The new ownership and what's happening at Laguna Seca is really tremendous. So this year's going to be extra special. Wouldn't you agree?
Oh, it's going to be extra special, all right. And they're having a tribute to the Chevrolet Corvette.
Yes.
And there are going to be a SCAD of famous Corvette racing cars there that people don't normally get to see, some coming out from the GM Heritage Center and others coming from private owners. But there's going to be a tremendous display of Corvette, and you don't want to miss that one.
Can you believe it's 70 years, a Corvette? Where does the time gone?
Exactly.
It's a little frightening. Tom, thanks for being so generous today with your time and sharing a wonderful life you've had around cars. You have figured it out, and you figured it out a long time ago. Until you and I talk again, I'll see you at the Rolex Monterey Motorsports Reunion.
Look forward to it. Thank you.
You're welcome. And don't miss my talk tomorrow with another vintage racer where we get into Laguna Seca, Jonathan Ornstein. Tune in tomorrow. 20, 50, or 100 years from now, will there be a workforce to care for the collector vehicles we love? With auto shop programs disappearing across the country, it's a question we enthusiasts have to ask. That's why I support the RPM Foundation, which exists to ensure that the critical skills necessary to preserve and restore these vehicles aren't lost to time. One of the many ways RPM, which is short for Restoration, Preservation, and Mentorship, is accomplishing this goal is through workforce development initiatives. The RPM Apprenticeship Program enables the next generation of artisans to earn a living while they learn the craft of restoring and preserving these vehicles directly from industry professionals. The Endangered Skills Program documents the process of masters training future craftspeople on a variety of critical skills in danger of being lost forever. For more information on how the RPM Foundation is driving the future of the collector vehicle skills trade, visit RPM Foundation today. They're one of the charities of choice here on Cars Yeah.
Thank you so much for joining us on today's ride here at Cars Yeah. Drive on over to carsyeah.com to find show notes and inspiring automotive fun. Download your free copy of Filler Up, a fun book filled with gorgeous photographs of fuel filler fun, including quotes from more inspiring automotive enthusiasts. Download your copy today, and we'll see you next time on Cars Yeah.